I thought I'd also talk a bit about the tongue while I finish it up. So you probably saw, if you was able to see it in the time lapse, that I was using lots of purples and blues, and you can probably still see a lot of the purples and blues in the tongue. Because, yeah, the reality is that that's the actual hues that the tongue would look like. For shadows, you're not going to get necessarily black as your shadows. You might get a few. So far, I don't think I used any black. I can have a look at the video again, but I don't think I did use any black in the tongue so far. I've been using this mauve, M-A-U-V-E, basically the 249 Polychromo, and using the light ultramarine blue a lot for the shadows as well. I went over it for a bit of a burnish with the light peach in the Prismacolor. I'll do it again. So basically I've done it already on this central line, and you can see it goes very kind of smooth and shiny. Once that's down, I then get like a sharper pencil and I rough it up, because that way it gives a bit more of that texture. So same over here, it's a little bit shiny or smooth, too smooth. So I get this and I just do little squiggles for the moment. And then I will go back over it again with the purple again for those squiggles to have a bit more texture, because tongues, especially on dogs and larger animals, or even our tongues, if you stick your tongue out and look in the mirror, you've got a whole lot of crease and fold lines. Depending on how zoomed in it is, you probably won't see the actual taste buds, but sometimes you actually can. So if I could see the taste buds, I wouldn't draw them in on this photo, drawing, sorry, but if I was, I'd do little stipples with something like a darker red or a pink, little stipples like this. Yeah, I still might actually do it on the tip of this tongue, but little stipples, little dots, and that gives, and the thing is, if your brain can see a little bit of detail like that, those little dots, it will infer that detail to the rest of it. It's the same when you're trying to draw fur. I've commented to try and help people who've asked about drawing fur and fur texture, and especially on white, because what they'll tend to do is people seem to, grey seems to be the colour of choice when they're drawing a white animal. What they'll do is they'll use grey and do these little strokes all over it to look a bit like the fur, and then they end up getting this kind of ugly grey stripy thing that they're not really happy with. And the answer to simply try to help if we can, because I guess we've all done that, that's how we kind of learn, is look at the actual reference that you're dealing with. Or eventually, if you're not using a reference and you're drawing something completely fabricated, then just ask yourself, is grey the actual colour that you would see? And most of the time it's actually not. I mean, the white usually isn't even white. It's usually blues or it's creams or something else like that. And what you tend to do is to get these details, like I just said before about me stippling. I'm not stippling with black or grey. I'm doing it with a darker pink. So if the mid-tone colour is some sort of a pink, you go in with something a bit darker. So it could be a darker pink or even a red or a kind of a purple sort of colour. You don't want to go too many tones darker than what the actual base mid-tone is, because it'll be a bit too much in your face. The subtlety is usually enough. Your brain is actually very good at picking up subtle textures. And like I said, if your brain can see a little bit of texture, it will infer that detail to the rest of it. And it also saves you having to do an entire animal as detailed. It's kind of like it gives this illusion that there's detail everywhere, where the reality is there might not be. You might have only done the detail on the highlighted bits that are visible, but the dark bits or the overexposed bits, it's just washed out. But again, because your brain, it does it like your brain does it anyway when you're just walking around or just, doing your thing. Anything your eyes are receiving, and then that goes as a message through your brain then interprets it. It's all interpretation. So your eyes are literally just like, they're just a receptor. The job of your eyes is to just pick up light. Okay, so, it'll filter light in, goes to the back of the retina. You have things called cones and rods at the back of your eye on the retina, which are the cells that pick that up. And then they will transmit that information down the optical nerve to the brain, and your brain will interpret it. And it's that interpretation that is how you think you are seeing what you are seeing. It's why optical illusions also work. It's, again, tricking your brain into making sense of what it thinks it does. And there's a lot of inference going on there. There's a lot of stuff that your brain is inferring about when it sees certain things or thinks that it's seeing certain things. It's not actually seeing that stuff. Like, obviously, I'm just very, very giving this a very simple explanation. If anyone is interested about how your eyes work, I can do it. I mean, we cover it when I teach my psych students about eyesight. It doesn't get brought up in biology curriculum, but it does get brought up in psychology. And it's pretty cool. It gives me a good chance to actually bring my art in, because I can talk about how the eyes work. We look at how the brain interprets colour. We look at how light is received. In science, we do talk about light, but it'll be more sterile information. We'll be talking about, say, the visible light spectrum and what light actually is. Maybe a little bit about how your brain picks it up, but not that much. It's mostly discussed when we teach psych. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I find it pretty fascinating about how your eyes work. And hopefully it can help, if people understand how light works and how colour works, hopefully it can help you in your artworks. Because a big problem I see some people do is that they will draw what they think they're supposed to be seeing. So if they see an animal that they look at and go, oh, that's meant to be a white animal, they'll draw it white, and then they think logically, oh, grey is the darker side of white, so if I want shadows or texture, I'll do it with grey. And in some cases that's fine, that's exactly what you need to do. But in other cases, that's not actually correct, and you don't do it with grey. You might need to do it with something like, it could be a different colour that you're wanting to do it with, like a cream or a yellow. So what I'm now doing, I'm going in. So you probably saw me while I was talking. I was going in with the purple to do the crease lines. So now I'm doing the highlight on that, because anytime you have any sort of crevice, whether it's on skin or tongue or any sort of tissue on an animal, you're going to have a highlight section. So wherever there's a shadow, there's going to be some sort of a tip of a highlight. So I'm going in with my slice tool. This is a very recent addition. Previously, what I would have done to get these details is I just would have left it blank and I would have drawn around it, but it honestly is not exactly the same thing. Or I would have gone in with like a very sharp white, like a waxy Prismacolor or something like that. I know some people also use pens. Posca markers are very good for very white, like say I wanted to do like a very white dots here or something. Some people go in with markers for that. I know a lot of pencil artists do that. I mean, most of my work I don't, just because I don't like actually most of my commissions I don't think I have, just because I don't like, personally I don't like, there's nothing wrong with it, but personally I don't like the raised up paint dots. Like to me, I think you can see the medium change from pencil to something else, which is nothing wrong with that if that's what the person wants, but for me I just don't do it. I have done it in the past with other artworks, or if I'm mucking around, or when I was experimenting and stuff, of course, because you got to experiment to work out what you want. But what I'm going to do, so here I've left a bit white. I just left the paper naked to achieve that. So I'm just going to scratch out with the slice. Okay. And then you get those little white highlights. But yeah, it's not as good as using the Posca markers, but for me personally, I want it to look like it's all in pencil, not in a different medium. But I do mixed media as well. I've done pencil with ink, and I've done watercolor with pencil is actually really good too. A lot of people will do, I think I already said that. People will do pastel as well with pencil. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm not going to just leave it. I actually go over it again. So I'm going over this now with a warm grey, and I'm just darkening it just a little bit, because the reality is that shadow going into the dog's mouth is going to darken down where those highlights are. There's still going to be highlights. So the whole thing now is it's about relativity, because relative to what's on either side of the highlight is what's going to, like the color on either side, even though this part of the highlight is darker than that bit of the highlight, the entire line still looks like a highlight, because on either side of it, the color is darker. So sometimes you can trick yourself and the viewer into thinking a color is lighter or darker than what it is just because of what's relative on either side of it, which is pretty cool. Again, it's tricking your brain. Now, these wisps of hair, once I do the rest of her muzzle, I'm then going to make a decision how much, or if I will be darkening things anymore or not, because at the moment these wisps are standing out just a little bit too much for my liking, but I will probably go back over them and darken them. They still will look like hair, like again, the whole illusion. Your brain will look at it and think that still looks like hair. But yeah, all right, this purple, I still want the tooth here, so I'm going in with a kneadable rubber, and I'm just pressing down to lift a little bit because I got a bit carried away with the purple, and I don't want to just keep layering up colors onto it, because as the tooth fills, it gets harder and harder to fill the color in, to the point that when the tooth eventually fills up, you're not really going to get anything else down. This is another reason why, if you've ever had a commission from me, I do give the warning to clients when I show them progress that there is going to be a point where I can't add anything else to a certain area. So if they want me to add something, I'll tell them that you have until this time to tell me, or if I finish this, or I'll leave this part blank until you make a decision what you want. Because sadly, if I have already gone over it, if it's already been okayed and someone changes their mind, sometimes it's at a position where I actually can't do anything about it. Depending what the paper is, some papers and some mediums are more forgiving, and I can lift the colour up. I can lift it up with tape, or I can lift it up with the kneadable rubber like you just saw. But if I've completely flattened the tooth, and especially if I've gone in and etched things out, it makes it more and more likely that that's just how it's going to have to look, which is why I constantly do prefer to give checks and updates to my clients, because it means that we can guarantee that everyone's happy, because no one's really a mind reader. They don't know what's going on in my head, and I can't really know what's going on in their head. And I really do like to try and make sure that at the end of the day, when I've produced someone's work, that they're happy and they think that it looks like their loved one or their pet, or that creature that they saw on holiday and took a photo of and want me to draw, or that animal that they work with as part of their PhD. Especially people who are experts, say they're a breeder and they know all the ins and outs of that animal, or if they're a scientist who works with that animal, then I definitely want to make sure that I get all the details right and that all the proportions are correct and that I haven't made a mistake anywhere. So yeah, I'm still working on it, but that gives you a bit of an inside look, hopefully.